Now, one thing that tends to happen as collectors at times is we get so consumed with the idea of acquiring a watch that we forget that the main purpose of acquiring a watch is to have experiences with it on the wrist. What's a watch if you can't actually have fun and do things with it? Watches are all about just having something that you can have come with you with these experiences. And in the spirit of that idea, today I wanted to look at different categories, different adventures that an individual could go down, and what are some good watches to accompany those adventures, and kind of reverse engineering watch recommendations around those things. So I have 5 different categories, 2 to 3 options per category. We'll have ascending prices within each one of those categories. They must have specifications or a fit to that specific use case. Say example like hiking. You're gonna wanna have a watch that's going to fit the mold of what you might expect from a watch of that category. Also, the activity is going to dictate the budget to an extent. If you're somebody that is on a boat and maybe a yacht, then maybe something getting a little more expensive makes some sense there because it's not an inexpensive hobby. So that's going to be one of the driving factors. Now, before we jump into articles that I would recommend checking out if you like just watches that are built to really withstand different circumstances, environments, one would be our Solar Watch blog, looking at a good list as well as understanding how they actually work. That will be in the description down below, but also looking at some military style watches as well. These are watches that typically are, when made for military use cases, typically made to last, are no nonsense, and are to the point. So I also recommend checking that one in the description down below. So for our first category here, we have hiking. So for here, we're looking for a watch that might pair perfectly with your Patagonia puffer vest while having all the specs you might need for a short or long day in the outdoors. We're looking at low profile designs, easy for wear with layers, has legibility, durability, and lume on those night hiking trips or maybe camping. Now for the first watch that comes to mind when thinking of hiking, I think of a field watch, and at the attainable end, I think the first one that comes to mind obviously is going to be Hamilton. Hamilton, in terms of the value for dollar, I don't think can be beat from the field watch category, and I think it's the perfect representation of what I would look for somebody trying to do this activity. I would recommend maybe going for the titanium version because it is going to be more lightweight on the wrist with the titanium case. You're also, with those variations, getting the 80-hour power reserve, but also getting 100 meters of water resistance that would only be available with the auto versions, which will probably come in handy when considering that there's going to be probably some other things on your mind. Sapphire crystal, sporty upside. Lume is not the greatest, but still there and will do the job. But these watches, simple, no nonsense, and I think will be a great companion on a hike or any adventure in the outdoors. For our next watch, we have the Tudor Ranger. Now, the Tudor Ranger was recently again unveiled in 2022 after being discontinued with the Heritage Ranger from 2014. These watches take on a 39mm case, making them much more wearable. 39 seems to be the case that Tudor is going to really own, and I think many people appreciate. Not too small for those that have larger wrists, but also not too big for those who have smaller wrists. I think it's a good middle ground of sizing. The other interesting thing about the Tudor Ranger is going to be the fact that this one is positioned with starting prices under $3,000, making them the most attainable MT powered watches that you're going to find from Tudor. 70-hour power reserve, COSC certified movement, pretty straightforward field watch design in terms of what it's going for. A good alternative for those that like the Explorer look but want it more on a budget. And whether you want to go for the bracelet with the T-Fit clasp to have some on-the-fly adjustment on those humid days, or go for Tudor's great straps that they offer up on their many different watches, I think both are great choices and winners if you are looking for this type of adventure. And then for our final watch here, I think many people would say Rolex Explorer. I'm gonna go with the Rolex Explorer 2, partially just because I think that really is my favorite Rolex line. That with the GMT Master and the Standard Explorer, they're all in there in the mix. But I just love this collection, and although made for spelunkers, I think even for those maybe going up the other opposite direction in terms of up above, maybe going up a mountain or going down a trail, I think these absolutely work as well. I would probably recommend for those that are really gonna try to put it through the paces to go for the 226 570. That is going to be the larger variation. Lume is up there in terms of best in class. Also getting some GMT functionality, probably not gonna be that useful in terms of this type of adventure, but hey, it's there if you need it. And recently updated with some new movements as well with that 70-hour power reserve, superlative chronometer, plus or minus 2 seconds a day. For next category, we have flying. So whether you're doing your best Tom Cruise Top Gun impression or working in private or military aviation, the Pilot's Watch is an iconic category that pairs an interesting range of complications with legible dials and resistance to lower pressure environments. Now, to look at this category, I do want to consider what will pilots actually wear. And the first watch I think is in alignment there with the Citizen ProMaster Skyhawk. So my cousin is actually a pilot for United here in the United States. He's always wanted to be a pilot, And I remember when he was just getting into the profession, all of his watches were pretty much Citizens. He loved Citizen, and also mentioned many pilots love Citizen as well. So that was the first time I'm like, huh, all right, cool. This was close to a decade ago, and I remember he was getting into this. And since he has gotten a little bit more into watches, he actually has my old Zen 104 that I previously owned. So I got him in the rabbit hole a little bit. But Citizen, absolutely legit pilot watch, and I think these are good representations of that. The ProMaster collection commonly gets paired with the dive watches that Citizen is making, but many people forget that they have these true aviation timepieces that also are fit for professional specification. So the Skyhawk series is a descendant of the original NaviHawk and is an analog digital feature-rich eco-drive powered pilot's watch built to complement the unique needs for pilots in flight. It syncs with your local atomic clock and tracks a wide range of timekeeping features, including a world time function, 2 alarms, UTC, a 1/100th of a second chronograph, a countdown timer, and much more. Outside of something like a smartwatch, this watch offers just about as much data as you can ask for in a solar rechargeable package with an unnecessary but awesome 200 meters of water resistance. For this next jump up in kind of this middle tier here, I'm gonna be looking at the Longines Spirit Zulu Time. So this is a watch that, of course, has been probably one of the bigger releases of 2022. I think many people are behind this release. We long awaited for a GMT that also could rival that of the Tudor Black Bay GMT since that was released in 2018. And I think this is a good rival to have it while also coming in $1,000 less. So for this watch, you're getting a 70-hour power reserve, COSC certified movement, also being a true GMT with the isolated function of that local hour hand. Great and very useful for pilots that are doing trips across the country, across the oceans. Having that functionality definitely will be easy if you are doing a lot of trips throughout the day. It's also thinner than the Black Bay. You have 3 different variations to choose from: the black dial, green, and then also the blue version. Finishing is great, bracelet is solid, but also you have the strap with the on-the-fly adjustment within the clasp. So a lot to like here. Pretty decent lume as well to go along with it. Not quite on the par of the Black Bay, but definitely a new class leader in the price range around $3,000 for a GMT watch. And then for our stretch pick for the pilot here, I think you have 2 options. You could go for the GMT Master, but for me, I want to go with the Breitling Navitimer. When the watch that you're picking here, I think if it's also the watch that was made in 1952 as a request for the U.S. Aircraft Owners and Pilots Association and continues to be almost a poster child of what represents that organization in a watch, I think you have to give the edge to the Navitimer. This watch has become one of the icons of aviation timekeeping. Slide rule bezel, chronograph, iconic design, variety of different styles, cases to choose from. You did recently see the new unveiling of some different sizes and dial colors. I recently covered the 41mm variant, which probably is the Navitimer for me. I never really was drawn to the Navitimer personally, but now I get the buzz now that they're not 45mm dinner plates all the time. So I think they're wonderful watches though, even if they're not for me. If you like the Navitimer design, if you have a love for aviation, this watch has become so synonymous with this world of taking the skies that I think it absolutely deserves its flowers when looking at this type of adventure. For our next category, we have diving. And when we're talking about the diving category, we're not looking at the guys who think that they have to take off the Rolex Submariner to get into the hot tub. We're looking at the serious recreation or commercial divers, or people who intend to actually try to take their watch through the paces underwater. So for our first watch here, we have the Seiko Patty, the SRPE 99. So this is a watch designed for the Professional Association of Diving Instructors, and with that affiliation, come on. And looking at the price range around $500, it's hard to overlook. So this diving format in terms of its case is going to approach to the SKX format with that vintage style 6309 turtle case and construction. Best in class lume, perfectly capable dive watch, ISO compliant in terms of what it's going for. The 4R36 movement on the inside, reliable, no nonsense. The Pepsi bezel to me is a perfect affiliation with this style and design. And with the removal of the SKX from the contemporary lineup of Seiko, these are pretty much slam dunk no-brainers when looking at a dive watch of this styling. For our next watch, we have the Doxa Sub 300. So these are watches that you either love or hate, and mostly the people that love them have some love for diving, and that's just because of the pedigree that this brand has in regards to dive watches. Now these watches were initially designed for the diver in mind. the testing of the dials, ensuring that they had visibility in murky underwater environments, the wearing on the wrist, as well as the wide variety of dial colors to choose from, and the Jacques Cousteau connection make these pretty much no-brainers. Also, with accurate movement on the inside, you're getting an ETA 2824, but a COSC certified one at that. And a watch that many people might detest the looks of, but for those that are in the know and love the world of dive watches, one that I feel like should be in any dive watch enthusiast collection. Now for our last watch here in the diving category, we have the Omega Seamaster Ultra Deep. This is a watch with a questionable name, but it also is gonna be unquestionable in terms of what it's able to achieve underwater. So the original prototype watch that actually went down into the Marianas Trench in 2019 was able to go down and actually beat out Rolex in terms of the deepest depth a watch was ever able to withstand at 10,925 meters, just topping what Rolex was capable of by a very small margin. But still, you have to give them the W. In terms of the prototype watch's size, it was not a small one, let's just say that. 55 millimeters in diameter and 28 millimeters thick. That was certainly a hog on the wrist. In terms of the Ultra Deep now though, and what is being produced in production, you're looking at not as small, but definitely smaller, 45.5 millimeters and 18 millimeters thick. And this one comes in with 6,000 meters of water resistance, so 20,000 feet. Will you ever go down that deep? Absolutely not. But is it cool to know that your watch could withstand it if you could go that deep? Sure, yeah, that's cool. So for our next category here, we have driving. So this is for those individuals out there that want to recreate Tokyo Drift in their Mitsubishi Eclipse GSX in the Walmart parking lot, or that individual that, you know, brings their Lamborghini to the shop 3 times a month to get it fixed and everything fine-tuned. If that's you, this is the category for you. Now, the first watch that we're gonna be looking at here is from a micro brand known as Autodromo, the watch specifically the Group B. Now, normally I would not have tried to put a micro brand on this list, but this brand, its entire identity is attached to the automotive culture. And when there's a lot of brands that do this, it feels really forced and just does not come off as genuine. This is one that I think does it well, and it does not feel as forced. The whole styling, the vintage flair, emulating the dashboard instruments of classic cars, it just feels appropriate and authentic when it's done by Autodromo. And a pretty cool watch as well with the Group B. It's a little bit more minimalist in its approach, no nonsense in terms of what it's going for, some cool pops of color in the process. You have a Miyota 9 series movement on the inside, so the 4 Hertz version. So those movements I think are pretty much close to being on par with those entry-level Swiss options. Under $1,000, variety of options to choose from in terms of those different color variants. In a pretty wearable case at 39 millimeters and a slim 9 millimeter profile as well with that integrated steel case and bracelet. So now for our next watch here, we have the Tag Heuer Monaco. So this is a watch that is so intertwined and inextricably linked with racing culture that I feel it just has to be on this list. Sure, it is polarizing in terms of its square case, and a true square case, not a rectangular case. It's going to wear pretty much unlike any other watch you're going to ever try on, but it's iconic. And I'm not overusing that word iconic here because I really do believe this is one of those watches that when you see it on somebody's wrist, you know it immediately. The square case still has 100 meters of water resistance, in-house caliber with the Tag Heuer caliber 02, COSC column wheel chronograph. Steve McQueen also has a connection here, so that's also just always cool to add some elevated flair to what is being projected on the wrist. The color variations and the dial layout all just feel very much racing inspired. The pops of red throughout just feels like I'm driving some sports car, and it just feels at home when having 2 hands on the steering wheel. And for our last driving watch here, we have the Vacheron Constantin American Historique 1921. This watch, one of my favorite watches from Vacheron, and honestly one of my favorite dress watches on the market. It looks like a surrealist Salvador Dali meets Alice in Wonderland type of design, but the watch was originally created for the emerging US market in the early 1920s after World War I with the rising production of automobiles and trying to capitalize on that market. It's an eccentric type of dial display in terms of the positioning and orientation, but also at the core, it's still very classic watchmaking. Sure, you have this askew sub-seconds, the orientation of the crown and the dial itself are all off, but it just feels beautiful when you have it at that resting position as if you had your hands at 10 and 2 easy to read the time in that circumstance. 4400 caliber on the inside. It's going to be adjusted to have the sub-seconds be in alignment a little bit differently than the typical 6 o'clock position. Now available in a variety of different gold tones. We saw the recent unveiling of the white gold version in the previous year. All of them beautiful, all of them classic with its Breguet hands, Arabic numerals. Again, just a classic driving style watch that's not gonna be for everybody, but those that want this eclectic styling with traditional watchmaking, I think it's a perfect marriage of those two very ideas. And for our last category, we have boating. So whether you're on a pontoon boat or a hardcore yachting enthusiast, you'll want a capable watch that fits the nautical theme for your boating adventures. Now looking for at least 100 meters of water resistance here, you want marine styling and maybe some bling at the higher end. So for our first watch here, we have the Orient Kamasu. And although we're not gonna be going into the depths of the ocean here, we're mostly going to be on the boat itself, I think we're okay without having some ISO compliance with the watch because pretty much everything else, it's going to check off the boxes. Manufacturer caliber movement with a nice range of deviation and accuracy. I've tested Orient watches like just countless times, and I'm always just like, how are these things running better than some basic level ETAs? Not to put these crazy expectations on it, but I've just always been impressed with Orient in terms of what they're delivering. These cases, although it's going to be coming in at a 41 millimeter case, gonna wear much smaller than that. I would say this wears closer to a 39.5 millimeter case on wrist. Sapphire crystal, reasonable thickness, and can definitely be worn in a variety of different environments. Orient is raising their prices, so if you haven't heard about this yet, it's a little unfortunate. There's a pretty big price increase too. You're talking about, say, 15-20% on some models. So just be aware of that. If you are trying to get an Orient, just be ready. But even with that price increase, I still think they're pretty good value because I think for many years, Orient was just like this. It didn't even make sense how good of value some of them were, like Orient Bambinos for like $140, $150. It just is such a good watch for the money, even with a little bit of a price increase. So next we have the Oris Diver 65. And personally, I just look at this watch and I could just imagine it being on somebody's wrist with like a fisherman sweater, just a deep knit fisherman sweater. You're setting up the sail and everything is good, life is good, and you're just taking on the waves. It's just a good day. This watch is going to be based off a heritage model from 1965, many different sizes, colors, and even other material options like the bronze cotton candy versions, which, you know, if you are that type of person, absolutely go for it. They're a lot of fun, but certainly not going to be for everybody. Reliable Sellita caliber on the inside, well finished for the price. One of the big drawbacks, or just at least points of contention for this watch, is the 100 meters of water resistance. But again, ISO 6425 standard is 100 meters, so can't be too hard on it. But I did think that made it more appropriate for this instead of the diving list, just given that it's probably great for the aquatic environment, but maybe not a true dive watch in terms of what maybe a diver would want if they're going deep down. But honestly, they're using their diving computer anyway, not a watch, so to each their own. And then for our last watch here, we have the Rolex Yachtmaster. Originally unveiled in 1992, and then a couple decades later with the Yachtmaster 2 to follow. This watch pretty much is exactly what you would imagine for the name. It's gonna have some cross connection to the Submariner in terms of its styling. Now you're going to see some different options out there. I really did like some of the older references, 37 millimeters. I think they look great. I think there were some overlooked models within the line. There were also some Rolexes that were a little later to the game in terms of catching up with some of the trading values in terms of some of the other sports models from the brand. But if you're the type of individual that is on a yacht and just wants something that's going to be in alignment with that, you know, hey, Rolex Yachtmaster, this was made for you. Perfect marriage. But all right, guys, that is my video looking at watches for different types of adventures. And I would recommend, the whole idea of this video is have a little bit more fun, but also I think encourage all of you to think about how you can set up experiences with your watches, whether it's spending time with people you care about, going on a trip, doing some type of activity, and actually using your body and your watch and getting out there of your comfort zone. I think that's what's important when it comes to buying these watches. If you're just buying them and just hoarding them and just sitting in like Gollum in the Mount Doom, I mean, that doesn't really work. You need to get out there, have some fun, do your thing, and enjoy the watches that you have on your wrist. If you enjoyed the video, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe, and hit the bell icon. Really would appreciate that as well. Also, definitely check out those articles down below that I referenced at the beginning of the video. Some of the best solar watches out there, understanding how they work, and also some solid military options as well. But guys, thank you again so much for watching. Be well, and I will see you all very soon.